Well, I would like to welcome with us today Laura Friedman Williams. She has written a new book called Available, a memoir of sex and dating after a marriage ends. And I have had the opportunity to read this book in the last few days, and I found it to be hilarious and relatable and so very important. And I am so glad you are here to join us.
Thank you so much. I love talking about my book, so I welcome opportunities to do so. Thank you.
That's great. And the thing that I loved as I read your book is that you're just like me. You're just like, you know, women in it's just so familiar. It's all relatable.
Yeah, I think sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, going through this, going through a marriage and having that become so much part of your identity, being married, being mom, being part of a community, and then having that change suddenly is a big adaptation. And I want to hear more about how hard that was for you and kind of how you ended up writing a book about it.
Well, yes. I mean, I would say yes to everything you just said. I think it's funny, when I was growing up, I knew so many women who were divorced. Like, so many of my friends' moms were divorced, and then, divorce is very common. And
Right.
because it's so common, I think we have this idea that it's like not that hard, and it's not that traumatic.
Mm,
And that was really the biggest shock to me, was like, when it happens to you, it's really as traumatic as a death.
mm.
Um, I was very young when my father died. So my mother was widowed in her mid 30s. So it's like I've seen, death and divorce. And I'm not saying one is preferable to the other. Neither one of them really is. But I can say for myself that the experience was akin to grieving. I felt that the
Mhm.
loss of my identity
Mhm.
was so jarring that I really questioned, like, who am I if I'm
Right.
not the wife? And when it's also like my perception of our life together was so off.
That,
And I thought,
that,
I don't even know myself. That's the
yes.
craziest feeling. Like, I thought I was a very self aware person. I
Right.
was a person, I have a lot of friends, and my friends would all come to me for advice, for things all the time. Like, I always seemed like I had everything really in order
Right.
and that I knew stuff. And then it turned out I didn't know my own home.
Yeah, and you begin to question everything that you've known about the past. And I think in some ways that's why divorce is so hard as
Yeah.
compared to even death. It's like you have to rewrite your history because what you thought was true isn't true anymore. And
Yep.
so then you start questioning everything you do moving forward.
Yeah. I think one of the things that came as such a shock to me about the divorce was that it altered my perception of my past, my present, and my future.
Right.
Nothing was certain anymore, not even my memories of what our past had been. I thought we'd been very happy. I thought we'd be together forever. We were like, we were 20 when we met. So in my mind, we were almost childhood sweethearts. We had grown up together. And when I found out that he was having an affair, it was such a blow to me because I thought we were happy.
Yeah,
I thought we had everything. And
right.
so his perception that he didn't have enough was just so devastating. So the grief I felt, it was very raw, it was very primal and consuming, and it made me deeply angry. And I'm not by nature an angry person, and I found myself consumed by anger. And that was very new for me and also terrifying because,
Absolutely.
again, it's that feeling of like, who am I? Well,
Mhm.
I was a wife. I was a really happy stay-home mom. I was almost like a 1950s wife. He went off to work and I took care of everything in the house and the kids and made his doctor's appointments and, took care of things for him. And and now I'm just fuming. I'm like the classic divorcee who just has toxic anger spewing from her all the time. I could feel it. And I thought, I'm losing myself. And that was so sad and so scary. And I have a very close friend who's a therapist who's known me since I was a child. And I remember calling her one day and just sobbing and saying, I don't even know who I am anymore.
Mhm.
And I don't want to be this person. I don't want to be angry. I don't want to be bitter. And it's all I am. And she said, you won't always be.
Right.
This is not who you are. And you have to move through this. You're not marked forever. it helped me to hear. I needed to hear that a lot because I thought that I was ruined.
So how did you move through it, and how did you begin to forgive and to find yourself?
Well, there were a lot of components to it. I didn't waste a lot of time. I think in hindsight, like now it's been over 3 years, since we've separated, and I've written this book in that amount of time. It's really not a lot of time. I'm sort of a doer. I like to just keep in motion. And really within about 6 months of separating, I realized that I was slowly dying inside, and that I needed to do whatever I could to stay alive. I really felt that dire. I felt that dire. That's how much I felt the loss of myself and of the life I'd once had. So I went out by myself one night. I went to a bar by myself, and
So brave.
it was so brave. I don't even know what I was thinking. I mean, I really channeled every mantra, every positive thing I could say to myself. I just did everything I could to get myself out the door and get myself to a bar by myself. I don't even know I don't think I was thinking, because if I was, I wouldn't have done it. But I met somebody, this is a pretty pivotal moment in my book. And I went back to his hotel and slept with him. And what I realized was that I was intact. I thought that he was going to discover the broken shards of a once whole woman, and that it was going to be official, well, she's damaged goods. But I wasn't, in his mind or mine. And that was it was such a revelation to me, because I really felt like, oh my God, I can do this. I'm still a person, even without my husband. I'm still whole.
And there's more parts to you than you knew there were. I mean, that's the thing. I love that part of the book. I love how free you are with discovering those parts of yourself and really being vulnerable in such a big way.
Yeah, I think what happens is, you have a role in your relationships with anybody. And over time, you learn what your role is. Right. Well, when you're freed from those constraints, and the question is, you can be anybody you want to be. Who do you want to be? Well, I wanted to be a vixen. I wanted to be a divorcee out on a Saturday night. And I suddenly realized I could do that. Yeah. And by the way, I did that and then still had to wake up and feed my kids, and get them off to school or camp. I still had to look my ex-husband in the face and, accept the devastation that was between us. So it's not all or nothing. I think the important thing always to remember is it's a journey and a process. And there's not much you can do to rush that, right? You just have to go on this journey, be open, and understand that it's going to be one step forward, one step back, one step forward, one step back. If you get a step forward, great. Let it buoy you forward. But if you go back, it's not permanent. You just got to kind of be where you are.
Right. I also love this whole idea that not only did you discover your sexuality, but I mean, you really learned about the new way of being in this world and dating. I mean, that was so frightening to me after, marrying my first date practically.
Wow.
And then, after 32 years, this idea that you go out and sleep with somebody else. And how do I know what I know? I don't know what I know. Yeah. In that whole new game of it, how do you meet people? What is the right thing to do? How do you dress? I mean, all of it feels so frightening for a lot of people that I think it stops them in their tracks.
Yeah. And I understand why. I really do. I think that if I had really dwelled on some of the mistakes I made or faux pas I made, I probably would have stopped. What I tried to do was just keep forging ahead. I guess I thought I had more there than I didn't have, that even in my mistakes and even in my, the things I did where I was like, oh, that's how it's done. That's embarrassing. I didn't know that or whatever. I just kind of accepted that I knew more than I didn't know. I still had more to offer than I was depleted by. So, I had a couple funny experiences, like one where I was dating this man, and he told me, actually we're still dating and it's been a couple of years. And he told me maybe a month into the relationship that he really appreciated women who had no pubic hair. And I was so embarrassed. Oh my God, you've been sleeping with me and the whole time being slightly
Right.
repelled by me. And I didn't know that that was a thing. Like,
Right.
I know women get Brazilians, but like, I never have, and nobody's ever complained. I mean, nobody ever being my husband.
Right.
Um, and I was a little embarrassed and also kind of indignant, like,
Right.
take me as I am, or don't take me at all. But there were moments like that where I thought, so some of the rules of engagement have changed. And I can either just be embarrassed and go back into my room and close the door, or say, okay, well, I didn't know that. And I'll decide if I want to do that or not. And
Yeah.
that was it.
And everyone has to learn. I mean, he had to learn somehow what he wanted and what his preferences were. And there was there's a moment for each of us as we kind of discover those little messages.
Yeah,
I
and you
think,
can work it out.
yeah,
That's the other thing is like, by the way, if you're with somebody and it's all or nothing, it's do or die for them. Like I can't see you anymore because you have pubic hair and I don't like that, or because you don't like to talk during sex and I do, and it's got to be one or the other. That person may really just not be for you. And then it might be time to say, this doesn't feel right for me.
yeah,
Um, Everything, again, it's about is it more good than not? And I think like with this, there were some men who like they love to talk when they're having sex, and I don't. I just like to be quiet and like kind of float away in my mind.
mhm,
So I've learned to compromise.
right,
There might be a time for talking sex and there might be a time for quiet sex. And again, it's like I don't have the language. I didn't have that in my marriage and in my life. I didn't have
mhm,
a language for sex, for talking about sex while having sex. I'm
right,
learning. It
right,
doesn't always come naturally to me, but I just sort of, I don't know, I play along and I try not to take any of it too seriously.
right. And you try new things, which is how you figure out what you like.
Yeah, and some of it you'll love and some of it you won't. And some
Right.
of it maybe you'll do anyway because you think, you're with somebody. I'm sorry, the light is shining on me in such a way that I feel like I look like I'm on fire. I'll turn a little bit.
It's okay. You are on fire.
I'm on fire. So I think you learn, and I think it's really important to stay open and just not to let the fear consume you.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is about confidence.
Hmm.
Right. I think that there is a woman interviewed me. She's a British podcaster. Her name is Viv Groskop, and she wrote a book called How to Own the Room. She also has a podcast, How to Own the Room. And it's really more of like a business book about how to like own the room in a meeting or at an
Hmm.
event. But I listened to it and I took it personally. I really thought, how do you own a room? Well, you own it by being confident and by owning your mistakes and by sometimes just being really vulnerable and saying, this is my first time. I'm scared. So just so you know,
Yeah.
and that's okay. You know what? I said things like this and nobody ever looked at me, askance. It was like,
Yeah.
okay, okay, that's
No,
it.
and I think that's one of the things that I found so refreshing in the book was your vulnerability, was your willingness to just put yourself out there. I love the story. Well, I didn't love it for you, but I love the story about your ribs.
Oh
That
my.
scene, I just thought, and that guy, like, who does that?
Well, yeah, I definitely, again, I think it's something about understanding your comfort level. And also, so, the story is that I was with a man who drank too much the night that we went out together and told me his daughter wasn't coming home, his teenage daughter, and she did. And I was sort of roaming the halls naked and then jumped to get out of the way and cracked a rib on a bathtub while doing so, and then had to basically stumble back to the room where he was still sleeping drunkenly in his bed. And that was the end of it for us.
Yeah, I would hope so. I'm really glad for you that that was the
There
end of
has
that.
to be, you can set the bar really low so that you have lots of opportunities, but still draw a line for yourself somewhere.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
also think it's important for women to know there's a lot of fish in the sea. So
Yeah.
if you go out with somebody and it doesn't feel right, or you don't think you're being treated nicely enough, or he seems jealous or possessive, or just feels off, just move on. There will be
Yeah.
somebody else. I think that we're so goal oriented in our relationships.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
certainly was like you. I got married. I met my husband super young. I had very little dating
Mhm.
experience. And my goal was to get married.
Right.
So as a 47-year-old woman, I go back out into the world. My goal was not to get married. My goal was to be with somebody to whom I would not have to marry. And that made the pressure just go phew,
Right.
because it was like the goal was just to have a date. That was it. And once you change your mindset that way, I think it's very, very empowering because you realize all you're in it for is one date. It's not like you're looking at someone thinking, could you be my husband? Could I move in with you?
Right. Just go have fun. Make a friend.
Yeah,
Have a
have
nice evening.
sex. You know what? Like, it'll feel better. You'll feel better tomorrow if you have sex tonight, probably. Just go do it. And don't think to use a condom, be smart.
Mhm.
Don't put yourself I put myself in situations, I think, that weren't always that wise. I'm not proud of it. And I wrote about it because
You
I
learn.
wanted to share that I was reeling and didn't always make smart choices.
Yeah.
I think I'd be smarter about it now. I think I'm a little bit more whole now.
Mhm.
But for the most part, I'd say, like, be safe in every way, and then just enjoy it.
Yeah. What, you talk about reeling, and I do think I want to go back to that for a second. Just that period of time where you're adjusting, where I often tell people, take your time. Don't make too many decisions right now, because you're not thinking with your full brain. Your prefrontal cortex is not accurately engaged at that point, right? And so making mistakes is going to be part of what happens. And feeling out of control, feeling crazy, feeling so angry you can't sleep, all of those things are really normal.
Yeah, and I think that and sometimes you think, if you're a person like me who's used to being in control
Yep.
and used to being very organized,
Hmm.
you may be under the illusion that you're making smart decisions or rational decisions that you will come to realize later are not.
Yes.
It's also why I
Agree.
don't think people should rush into divorce. Like, I don't think there is a really compelling reason to have the paperwork done and sealed within a year. I think it's very smart to wait until the dust has settled a little bit,
Hmm.
and there's forgiveness, because when you're reeling, I mean, it's like reeling from anything. You're just not making the best choices, and you're exhausted. You're probably not eating well.
Hmm.
Um, in my case, I was mothering three children who were also reeling, so I didn't have a lot of time to deal with my own for a lot of it. But I think what you said about taking time is, I'm so on the same page with you, because I often say to people, um, it just takes time, and you can't. That is the one thing you cannot rush.
No, no, and I think it depends on you and your personal pace, but it could take a long time. Like
Yeah.
that piece about forgiveness and moving on and finding yourself again. It takes how long it takes. You have a busy life, you have other things going on, you get new curveballs thrown at you. It's like you can't control any of it.
You can't control any of it. It's like, people make plans and God laughs. So however the saying goes, I think about that all the time, because I've been thrown so many curveballs in the past few years. Um, and it's a matter of continuing to adapt to the curveballs and move forward. But you have to be true to yourself, right?
Yeah.
Whatever that means for you. And for me, that meant getting back to a place where I felt like a positive, optimistic person who did not walk around with a lot of anger. So even when I was very angry and I was on fire with anger,
Mhm.
I was aware that I needed to let it go. And I was always thinking, what can I do to make this better? Because I
Yeah.
can't live like this.
Yeah.
And I just talked to a good friend of mine who, she she's just newly separated from her husband, I'd say 6 months, and he's been having all kinds of affairs with relationships with other women, and he just won't apologize. And she said to me recently, you know what? I'm not going to wait for the apology anymore. That's what I've
Good.
realized. If I wait for the
Mhm.
apology, I'll be waiting for the rest of my life, and it's hurting me.
Mhm.
So I need to move on without hearing
Mhm.
acknowledgement from him that he hurt me. God,
Yes,
that is so hard. But
it
it's
is.
like, it's choice that we make.
Right. Well, and the reality of it, that I came to is you're not going to get in divorce from this person what you didn't get in marriage.
Right. Very good point.
So,
Yeah.
well, I so appreciate your time today. I know you're busy, and with the release of this book, I'm sure you have a lot of interviews. So I appreciate you giving me some of your valuable time and for writing such an enjoyable and funny read. I hope people go out and buy it.
I mean, if I can inspire one woman to go out and have a one night stand, it will have been worth it.
It's true. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'd love to hear from women if they do. I
Okay.
definitely, it's fun for me to hear from women. Like, someone, actually, a woman who's 73 years old, just said to me, I was widowed 5 years ago. I thought I was really happy like this. I read your book and I decided I'm gonna go on a date. And I was like, amazing. That makes me so happy because it's just hopeful,
Awesome.
and it's feeling that there's something on the other side of it. The grief is here and there's something on the other side of it. You just have to get there. So I'm always happy to have an opportunity to share that with people. And so thank you so much for doing that work yourself, but also giving me the opportunity here to say that.